and we'll get started. We'll get started now. So I'd first like to thank very much Dr. Tarek Rajji, who is the Executive Director of the Toronto Dementia Research Alliance, which he's going to be presenting to us about today. And he's also the Chief of the Adult Neurodevelopmental and Geriatric Psychiatry Division at CAMH, and a clinician scientist at CAMH's Campbell Family Mental Health Research Institute, and he's a Canada Research Chair in Neurostimulation for Cognitive Disorders and a Professor of Psychiatry at the University of Toronto. So we're really thrilled that you're able to present to KITE today. I know that you and I and some collaborators and colleagues had a meeting not that long ago, and we were very excited to hear about the Alliance, and it was not something that we were entirely familiar with until you brought it to our attention. And it sounds like a fantastic opportunity. And at that time you had said, you know, we'd really love to have more interaction and more involvement with KITE. And so you offered to come and give us a presentation today. And I know that your intention is to give us some information about the Alliance and how KITE can get involved. But I also know that you're really keen on hearing from KITE researchers and wanting to know about what we're up to with respect to dementia research, and to be able to answer questions from the group. So the way that we're going to do this is that Tarek's going to give a presentation of about 30 to 40 minutes. And then we're going to reserve the last half to 20 minutes of the hour to have discussion and to answer any questions. So if you have questions as we go along, then he's indicated that you can just raise your hand or unmute to ask the questions in turn. But you can also enter the questions into the chat box, which I will be moderating. And so if there's natural breaks and it makes sense, I'll ask the questions then. Otherwise, we'll ask some of these discussion-based questions towards the end. So with no further ado, Dr. Rajji, it's on to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm really excited to present here and to learn more about the exciting, terrific, work that you do in the Institute. So yes, please, I will be presenting about the TDRA as a whole with some specific ideas, focus that we will go maybe a little bit deeper into. But anytime, feel free to interrupt. I'm not that great at multitasking, so if you just speak up, if you want to interrupt me, because I may not be able to catch, if you raise your hand on Zoom. So feel free to just speak up. So I'm gonna try to share screen here, and let me know if you're seeing the slides.
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, great. So yeah, so this is our logo, TDRA, and the first I thought I'll share with you just a brief history about TDRA and share with you some upcoming news. So the TDRA, Toronto Dementia Research Alliance, was conceptualized as an idea all the way back to 2009 with Tony Lang and Barry Greenberg, and started as kind of a pilot project. But then it was formally established as TDRA as a partnership between University of Toronto and 5 different memory clinics / institutions in 2012 with the leadership of Sandra Black at Sunnybrook. And then as an executive director. In 2017, there was a formal review of the TDRA, kind of an external review, highlighting kind of the accomplishment that happened over the past 5 years or so, and made some recommendations. In 2018, St. Mike's, which was one of the 5 institutions, so the other 4 are Baycrest, CAMH, Sunnybrook, and UHN, decided that they would step out of the formally of the TDRA because dementia was not in their strategic priorities. And then in September last year, I joined after research to take on the role of the executive director. Usually we have a core coordinating center, so usually it moves to the site, to the hospital where the executive director as primary affiliate. So that's why TDRA moved to CAMH as a coordinating center, which consists of a director of strategy and operations and research, two research coordinators and an admin person. And the upcoming news is that Ontario Shores, made the strategic direction to join formally TDRA starting in September. I've had some discussions with their leadership, VP of research, very enthusiastic, and the CEO. And so that's kind of the history of it in terms of how it started. The main themes and the main topics, focus of the vision and the mission statements is that we have two areas of focus. One is on research embedded in care. So that's one. And the second, which is in response to an extent to the review, the external review that happened in 2017, is building more bridges with the basic science community where we have, again, like some of the world excellence in the Toronto environment. In terms of its governance, also to give you more sense of what is it exactly, it's an alliance of the dementia, of different dementia researchers interested to be part of this network across, like I mentioned, university and now the different hospitals I mentioned. We have a research operations committee, so that's basically the committee that I chair as the executive director. I report to an executive committee, which consists of the CEOs of the different hospitals. So it's great to have this direct relation with the CEOs of the hospital. The operations committee is, we get advised by two advisory committees. One is a scientific advisory committee that consists of scientists and leaders of departments and centers in Toronto across the hospitals in the field of dementia, as well as external scientific advisors. That's a new advisory committee that we're establishing. And we have a well-established patient and family advisory council that has robust representation from community agencies, as well individual with personal experience with dementia, whether patients or caregivers. The actual work, so one thing that we developed robustly since I took on the role is developing research working groups. So these are working groups that bring together scientists with similar interests across the different hospitals to work together on some common initiatives. So we have, for example, now groups focusing on genetics, fluid biomarkers, long-term care, imaging, neuromodulation, open science, neuropathology, and preclinical models. And we continue to expand based on if there is kind of critical mass of scientists with a particular interest. And again, the purpose of these groups, that this is where the ideas of incubating new ideas come out, potential grants, but also some of the working groups are developing standards for example, the fluid biomarkers, or the genetics, where we would develop minimal data sets that would promote as TDRA to be used across different studies that are linked to TDRA, so that we can accelerate the generation of large data sets using those common standards. These working groups we connect at the Research Operations Committee, and this is how we share ideas, and we kind of cross-pollinate in some sense between them. And we follow, we have one principle also we put as part of our principles since I came on, is that the patient and family and would be partners across all activities in TDRA. So they are members of the Scientific Advisory Committee and of course of the Council of the Research Operations Committee, but also they are part of the small working groups in different stages of it, and we follow the EDI principles throughout our whole governance as well as membership. And these working groups are supported by the coordinating center that I mentioned, which is a core group of the TDRA. In terms of strategic directions, so these are the two headings in a way that kind of are anchored in our vision and mission statement. That we had a large kind of group meeting in October, just a month after I took on, kind of to think about, was like a brainstorming session in some sense, to try to think about where do we want to take TDRA in the next phase. And we kind of thought that we could cluster our activities and group them under two main themes. One is around standardization of care for individuals with dementia or individuals at risk with dementia across different settings, all the way from primary care to long-term care and as well as inpatient settings. And the second theme would focus on prevention. And this is where a lot of the work that would be linked to the basic science work, some translational work would fall under. So to give you some examples of projects that are ongoing that would fall under standardization of care, one is we have a TDRA database project that was really was a big part of the first phase of TDRA. So between, I would say, 2015 to 2020. And that was that's a project that was funded by Brain Canada, and the goal of that project was to develop a standardized assessment tool across the different memory clinics that's using the REDCap as a platform, and where different participants would get the same assessment and the same cognitive assessment, and with the consent, with the research consent, they would have their data hosted and saved in BrainCode. So as of last year, there are around 2,000 patients/participants who have been assessed with this project, and we have now the cognitive data in BrainCode as a data set that we're finalizing, and we're also will have all the clinical data as part of that data set, which would be a nice cohort that would available for the research community in Toronto, and then the goal is to expand this clinical tool to different memory clinics based on some feasibility work that we're going to be doing after this development of the tool now. So it was developed in the research setting, but now we're going to implement it and pilot in the clinical settings, and see if it could become a standard of assessment in different memory clinics. There is also another kind of activity that falls under standardization of care, where we build the consensus around developing one single dementia imaging protocol, MRI protocol, so that our patient, this is a clinical protocol, so that our patients, when we see them in the clinic and we order a dementia imaging protocol, everyone will get the same sequence and that took, very robust discussions and engagement by neurologists and neuroradiologists, so we'll be announcing this very soon. And next step of that is also working on the interpretation, standardizing kind of the read of these images. As you may know, among the clinicians, we sometimes there's quite a bit of heterogeneity, I would say, and variation in terms of how MRIs of patients with dementia are being reported on. Another activity that's also, I would say, quite robust is we have a working group focusing on long-term care dementia pathways. So developing a framework, a research framework that's would standardize the assessment by the specialist who would consult to these long-term care homes, standardizing the assessment, and potentially eventually kind of this, leading to some standardized management and treatment and interventions in the long-term care sector. It kind of follows the principles that I thought that there is of the TDRA database project, which was focused on the memory clinic, and it also builds on some of the standardization of care in dementia that our group at CAMH have been doing and working on, and we're running now a large trial in 3 provinces for inpatient mental health units and long-term care as well. And the future kind of project that will build on some work that myself and Maurice Friedman from Begres have been involved in with the LIN is on the towards development of a primary care pathway for standardizing the assessment and the management of individuals with dementia or at risk for dementia in the primary care sector. So that these kind of ideas of some are more advanced than others, where would like to focus on at this point in TDRA. But of course, this is building on the activities and that happened before and the current activities. But as I mentioned earlier, these are the strategic directions that are built kind of bottom up from the community, from the scientists, and if there is more kind of collaboration, I would say with KITE, would love to have, see if those resonate with some of the research work that's happening now with KITE or something else that could be potential future focus. So moving on to the second strategic direction, which is a prevention, so there are 3 points. I'll talk more so about the first one, which is an initiative that we announced last month, which is maybe earlier this month in April. It's the Temerity TANS TDRA initiative. And we're building similar ones, for example, with the MITRE2I collaboration. We're also having some discussions as well with the neuroinflammation, immunology group to build collaboration between on that theme with dementia and neurodegeneration. Ultimately, this is just an idea that would be wonderful to have dementia prevention clinics in Toronto, in Canada, kind of building on some of the activities that happen south of the border. But I'll go into more details about the first one, the Temerity TANS TDRA initiative, just to give you an example of what could potentially be future initiatives as well under that theme of prevention, as we're thinking about them at this point. So as I'm sure many of you would know, this famous slide from the Lancet Commission on dementia care and prevention, kind of really describing a roadmap for potential prevention of dementia by identifying potentially modifiable risk factors and across the lifespan. And if all of these are addressed and if we discover interventions that could modify those risk factors, the estimate is that we can prevent 40% of dementia cases. So that's one way we classified, as we're developing this initiative, classified those risk factors that some maybe are linked to social determinants, like around low education, for example, or social isolation. Some are maybe more addressed in the primary care sector, like hearing loss and smoking. And maybe some are more addressed in specialty clinics and the specialty hospitals, social care hospitals, like the network of the TDRA. And among those, depression kind of is on one of the top ones, being one of the potential modifiable risk factors. So that's how we chose kind of the focus of this initiative is to focus on the interactions between depression and dementia in both ways, and to try to understand how these two interact. As some of you would know, the depression doubles the risk of dementia, and more so in late life, but really across the lifespan. With some that suggest that even early on in life could increase the risk of dementia. So there is also, this is a collaboration from the name, as you can tell, is with the collaboration with the TANS Center, which is one of the world-class basic science center with Graham, under leadership now with Graham Collingridge, and that focus also resonates with a lot of the basic science work that's happening, that's focusing on the impact of stress on synaptic loss and the NMDA dependent neuroplasticity. So it kind of also there is a link between depression and dementia, that building on the strength that's happening in Toronto on understanding the impact of stress on neuroplasticity, synaptic plasticity. So and also it builds a lot on some of the translation research, clinical research that's happened in that field. Whether with imaging, looking at peripheral biomarkers, or PET imaging, or neurophysiology assessments that can look at those synaptic at brain plasticity in humans. So, we organize this initiative with the 3 elements. The first element is a brain medicine research fellowship. And this is, so the idea here is to recruit and train fellows who would be coming from the different disciplines. They could be have subspecialty in neurology, psychiatry, physical medicine, and rehab, or especially that's related to the brain. And they would be willing to dedicate 80% of their time to do research, and one day of the week do a brain medicine clinic. And the second element is a seed funding competition, and then a third is a workshop. So I start talking about a little bit more details around this. The plan is to fund around 2 to 4 kind of fellowships. Some would be in the basic science, some would be in the clinical research. This would be 2 to 3 years type of fellowships. And the clinical component is linked to the brain medicine fellowship that was this one, but it's a brain medicine fellowship that is led now by Sarah Mitchell at Sunnybrook, where fellows get trained so they get exposed and trained by disciplines that they are not typically have been exposed to during their residency. So the purpose of the clinical fellowship is that if I'm a psychiatrist, but I want to gain additional skills in trying to understand let's say indications of neurosurgery for brain disorders, then part of that training would be working along a neurosurgeon in some of these assessment of the patients. The patients at the brain medicine clinic at Sunnybrook are typically assessed by different disciplines at the same time, and vice versa. It could be neurologists who wants to expand their competencies in psychiatry, and so on. So it's bringing different disciplines interested in brain research and brain medicine. So we are, we announced this. We're in the middle of receiving applications and potential fellows, and we're in the process of really at this point receiving the application, I would say, and then at one point, and there is no deadline, so it's a rolling because it's not. And I know we may be a bit late because many of the residents have already matched in certain fellowships, but if you have potential fellows, please let us know. And the project, because again, to promote collaboration, the research project for the fellows and the supervisors, the ideal project would be a collaboration between 2 sides, and the fellow would have 2 supervisors, one from each side of the TDRA. These are potential themes of interest that we put that capture the current expertise within the network, all the way from cognitive sensory information processing, drug discovery, on the basic science, expertise in microglia, neuroplasticity, and all the way to clinical phenotyping and trials, AI, neurotechnology, and so on. So the second component of this is a seed funding. So that we'll be announcing soon, early summer, and that's to support projects that are high risk, high reward, again within the area of dementia and the research, dementia and depression, but when I say depression and dementia, really in a very broad sense. So and the ideal project again would be a project that would bring people together that may have not worked together before, or let's say dementia researcher who's never worked before in the field of depression, and vice versa, or bringing basic scientists with clinical researchers. So really big theme, big focus of this initiative is converging expertise, converging disciplines under that umbrella of depression/dementia. Excuse me. And the last component is an annual workshop, which will be launching in the second year of the initiative. And this is a workshop where would bring world-class experts, some from local, some international, who would be, and it would be an opportunity for the trainees and the scientists to present their work in a critical manner and get feedback, and really highlight the work that's happening in Toronto in this area. So that's the initiative. That's the Temerty TDRA TANS initiative. Temerty, because it's supported by the Temerty Faculty of Medicine. So that's in addition to being collaboration between TDRA and TANS. Another opportunity for trainees is that I think, so we're committed, one of the commitments for me is to, and TDRA in general, is really to advocate and promote dementia research early on in the career of students and trainees, and specifically medical students. And some of you may know the CREMS program, where this year we committed that we'll be able to support medical students if they get selected, they match with a supervisor who has a dementia project. So we'd be happy to support the stipend for these students. So that's the CREMS summer program. We also announced early on, which is still open. It's till May 7. It's in honor of Sandra Black, the previous executive director. It's a training award for trainees working in the field of clinical research and dementia, and it's on our website, and we're still receiving applications. So it's open. It's open for application. There's a typo here. It's not soon, so it's already open, and the deadline is May 7. Now, excuse me. Another big component of what we do at TDRA is focusing on infrastructure for dementia research, and the idea here is to help dementia researchers to streamline some different parts of the research project, all the way from recruitment to sometimes cross-institutional legal agreements, and all the way to data sharing. So that's kind of some of the themes we're focusing on. So, for example, we have a collaboration with the Utopian Network, where we developed a process, and we're still early on, so we're piloting it with some studies, so that we can promote dementia research among the primary care network, the large primary care network that the Utopian has. We also finalized, which also will be announcing very soon, a collaboration with the Alzheimer's Society of Toronto, and I'll show you a couple of slides on that after this one, where the TDRA would curate the posting of studies in the city of Toronto on the Alzheimer's Society website that is linked that is specific to services called TDN, Toronto Dementia Network. And also we have legal agreements, and we have the REB agreement and the privacy, so that the community, patients, family members, caregivers, could access that website and enter the information. I'll show you in more detail. We're also working on standardizing legal agreements, so that the scientists don't have to be developing a template that could be used across the different sites. That we don't have to invent the wheel in some sense every time we have a multi-site study, clinical study. We have our website in terms of communication. We're also, it's now on its own. We're having discussion with U of T, with the Temerty Faculty of Medicine, to move it to the faculty platform. We're on Twitter. We're also starting a newsletter. We haven't announced it yet, but if you're interested in receiving the newsletter in the near future, please send an email to tdra@toronto.ca. We're also part of the engagement with the community and the scientists, as we do scientist interviews to highlight their work, and another section called Scientist Explains, where scientists explain in plain language some research concepts. For example, Graham, talked about neuroplasticity. I had one talking about clinical trials and randomization. So these are meant for the public, really, to explain some of the fundamental concepts in research, to demystify, in my mind, some of these concepts. So this is the website I was just mentioning to you, with the collaboration with the Alzheimer's Society. So that's the TDN website, and where the design will be, I don't know if you can see the details here, but basically the visitor to the website can, in the search bar, can type, and then certain words that would take them to certain studies, but also they can choose from a menu. For example, use studies for people with MCI, studies for people with a certain age group, studies for caregivers, and then when they click there, then it takes them to the different studies that would be posted on the website, and then they could click on the individual study, enter their information, and the information would directly go to the coordinators that are linked to these studies, so that's for potential recruitment. Or the visitor to the website may say, well, I can't find any particular study I'm interested in. I still would like to enter my information for potential future studies, and they can do that, and their information would be hosted on a database that we would monitor and link those individuals to potential studies that could come up, or there may be already existing studies that they could be interested in, and we would screen them and link those individuals to the scientist team and the different studies that could be eligible for. So to post this information on the website, we need an RAB approved plain language, and so that the participant could connect directly to the study. And we have we're developing a triage, an equitable, transparent, open triage system, so that different studies are recruiting equitably. So these are all the slides that I have. I want to thank you again, and would love to engage, yes, in a discussion to hear about your work and or to clarify some of the items, the points that I mentioned in the slides. Thank you.
Wow, that was an excellent presentation, and it's really incredible to see the impressive collection and combination of initiatives, and also the synergies that are being created by the clinical and basic science, and opportunities for trainees is really amazing. And selfishly, I also like to see a few nods in there to sensory health, and the mention of the Livingston Lancet paper with hearing loss is a top potentially modifiable risk factor. So I know some colleagues on this call along with me have a lot of interest in that space in particular. So I'm going to encourage people to either raise their hand to ask questions, and maybe it would be nice if you introduced yourself and asked your questions. So Tarek gets familiar with KITE researchers, which I know is one of the goals for today. I do see that some people have put some questions in the chat, so I can also moderate that. But why don't we start off with Elizabeth, who I see has her hand raised.
I don't know if the camera works. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Rajji, for a really great presentation. And I've been around long enough to see the evolution of the TDRA, and it's really exciting to see the direction that you're going in. I have two questions. One is a quick one, which is whether or not TDRA is involved at all with the CCNA, because certainly there are projects that several of us are involved in with the CCNA where there would be overlap and synergy with the TDRA. But the second question or idea is more that there are so many of us here at KITE who are involved in dementia research in various ways, often related to prevention, certainly related to caregivers, communication, hearing. So I hesitate even to name the list because I'm going to leave people out who are here today. And I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to somehow tell you about that. You know, I don't know if there's a presentation we can do or a workshop, just so that you're aware of the full spectrum of what's going on at KITE regarding dementia, because there is so much, and it would be amazing to be more formally connected to the TDRA. That's all I'll say.
Yes, thank you very much. So to answer your first question, yes, for sure, we are. So with Howard, Howard is a member of one of the working groups, for example, in TDRA, and on the specifically the neuromodulation one. But I've had several conversations with Howard about, you know, how do we align some of the initiatives. For example, recently we had talked about the recruitment. So how do we, if there are initiatives that look at the recruitment processes that we're building in Toronto, can we expand them beyond the Toronto through the CCNA network? You know, the long-term care, for example, working group, one of the members is Krista Langto, who is the lead of Team 11 in CCNA, and I'm part of that team as well. So definitely it's a small world in Canada, so definitely there is synergy, and the activities that we're building, we're trying to align them as much as possible with something that's existing already in place through the CCNA, or that we connect with CCNA to build on them from what we're building from the TDRA. So I can give more examples. Like we're for the database project, for example, that we talked about. You know, the functional assessment tool is the same one that we're using, you know, to align it with the CCNA. So that's, you know, to answer your first question. The second part, absolutely, like that's I would love to learn more about your amazing work, and today, you know, it would be wonderful, as you know, to hear a little bit. But we could definitely organize a formal presentation. We did something last week or the week before. You know, we had CABI present to some of the, you know, organize a presentation by CABI to TDRA scientists to you know, to inform about. I mean, some of us know already what CABI, but it was nice to think about and generate some ideas for future collaboration. So we could do that. We could do it on a smaller scale, broader scale. So I definitely, I mean, that's one of my interests, and that's to learn more about your work. 100%.
I love that idea. Maybe Elizabeth, you and I can go offline and think about maybe coordinating a KITE Dementia Research Showcase and find an opportunity to connect.
That would be a great idea. I think there are quite a few people here who would participate.
Absolutely. So just a reminder to everybody, I am going to read out some of these questions in the chat, but feel free to raise your hand if you want to ask a question directly, or put it in the chat box. And for those of you who joined late, you'll notice hopefully that it is being recorded. So I will circulate the recording afterwards, just in case you missed some of it. Okay, so Dr. Tatiana Malieva has asked a question here that says, thank you for your excellent presentation. We recently completed a program supported by the Alzheimer's Association and found that modifiable risk factors that were highlighted by the Lancet Commission on Dementia, like depression, smoking, TBI, pose different relative risk on developing dementia in male and female patients with central nervous system trauma. Can you comment on whether the TDRA aims to focus on sex gender, specific risks and protective factors at every level in their research? For example, or i.e. genetics, preclinical models, neuroimaging. What is your personal thought on this matter with regards to clinical risks? Thank you.
It's a great question, and one of the first people I met when I took on this role and set up a meeting is Gillian Einstein from Baker, given her expertise in this area. And the reason why you don't see actually a working group, and because we talked about this explicitly, a working group on sex and gender, is because we thought, we're talking to Jillian, that really it should be across all different groups. So it should be considered as in the design and the conceptual across all different groups. And myself, my own work is in TMS, EEG, and neurophysiology, and we've seen it in our studies. There's a very clear, we published a paper where we see clear, distinct relationship between plasticity and cognition, plasticity measured using EEG based on gender. So it would be wonderful, yes, to learn more about this, the work you've done, and the differential risk factor based on gender that you've done. But again, it is meant to be one of the considerations very early on across all different research studies. And so for example, to give you how example we did, so the long-term care home group just submitted CHR grant, and part of that grant was connecting with Jillian and to get to design the analysis with that consideration into it. So
okay, excellent. Okay, so a question from Mary Hines. What stage are you at in looking at reduction of combinations of risk factors?
What stage in terms of like a specific research project? Is that maybe so?
I would say so. So if you can reflect on, or Mary, I think Mary unmuted, so maybe she can clarify.
I'll put on video too. Hate looking at disembodied voices. Well, personally am researching using combinations of reduction of risk factors. I'm looking at doing it sequentially through SMART goal setting. But I know there are other research projects that are being done in various places like Pointer and Thumbs Up. And I was just wondering how you're connected to any of that, or are you planning on getting connected to any of that? Or any other combinations or any other programs similar to that?
It's a great question. Yes, and that's so that's one of the longer term, but very dear to my heart. I've been part of a paper, a group in the US, led by the group in New York that focus on Alzheimer prevention clinics and the concept of these clinics and how to address the multiple risk factors at the same time. So that's why you see it sort of in one slide. But yes, that's one of the other things that that I was having conversation recently with Howard for potential collaboration is the CAN Thumbs Up. So, and my understanding is that it will launch in Toronto in September, I believe, because
I think so.
So TDRA would be very happy to support, promote that study, support it. And there are already some, so one of the studies that is a TDRA study in some sense, because it is a multi-site study that you may have heard about. It's called PACT-MD, which is a combination intervention. That's a prevention study that combines neurostimulation with cognitive training. But we need to do more. We need to do more of these type of multimodal interventions. These are costly interventions. These are large interventions, so they need planning. And personally, where I think we need to think more about is because there are already, as you mentioned, Pointer, and I'm sure you would know about the worldwide fingers network. So there are so many of these studies now, which is wonderful across the globe. I think it would be wonderful to put together a group of scientists to think about what is it that we can do different, that's not being, that we can follow some of the principles of the fingers trials, but maybe what we need to, I could be wrong here, but I think that there is more work that needs to be done to personalize those multimodal interventions, and really, and I've had start having some discussion with a biostatistician to think about what is the best model of trial for these multimodal interventions, because the A versus B is great, but everyone gets a combo of interventions with A, and don't get them in the B arm, but not everyone that's randomized to the A arm needs all the elements of A. And so then it gets really into, we need some sophisticated trials design that would help us optimize the multimodal intervention based on the individual groups. And I think some of the thinking needs to happen at that before launching a new study. And in my mind, what we could do is do some simulations. We know the risk factors. We have an estimate of the risk factors. We know the estimate about what could they contribute. So maybe we could do some simulation work with different trial designs to see what could be the impact on prevention, and then launch a new maybe AI-informed study to an extent based on risk factors. So I would love to get to move TDRA into that direction. I guess what I'm saying is that I think it would be wonderful to form a group to think about what could we advance in the field of multimodal, instead of just doing another trial of multimodal intervention, which there are some wonderful ones happening now as we speak. So that's my thinking, where I'm thinking about this.
Well, I'm looking at sequential, personalized, using SMART goal setting.
Yes. So that's definitely would be great, like as an approach. Would love to talk more about this,
because I feel that the studies are great, but how do they extend into the real world? I can't imagine anyone doing the finger study on their own all the time forever.
Yes. And the risk factors change maybe over time. So then should they continue to receive the same intervention? I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So I see only one more question in the chat. I don't see any hands raised. So just a reminder to people, we do have about 10 minutes left. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. In the meantime, Linda Rapson is asking or making a comment to reflect on. I didn't see any mention of nutrition pertaining to optimal brain function. So I guess the embedded question is in here is that something that people within the Alliance are looking into?
So no one in particular now is focusing on that particular topic, but there is no reason if there is a great, obviously we know how important is nutrition, but if it would be great if there is critical mass of individuals who want to focus on that could be, that's how kind of those research group emerge in some sense, and start leading kind of a new line of activity.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any questions? Lingering questions? Okay, well, Shabnam's sharing a comment. Thank you, Dr. Rajji, for such a great presentation and for your impactful work on advancing dementia-related research. Tatiana has another question. With regards to the working themes, what proportion is dedicated to preclinical models, clinical, and population-based?
So I don't know how to, so it's not that we have, we have, the TDRA is a clinical research entity. But we work closely, myself and many scientists in TDRA, we work closely with the basic science communities. So especially with the 10th Center, but really we have basic scientists. And when I say basic science here, I'm referring to bench type of research, so really preclinical animal work. But beyond that, we have activities, I can't really put a percentage, but really we're active in all areas. So as I mentioned, we have a very active fluid biomarkers working group. So that could be close to the basic science in some sense. The imaging group is very active. The genetic we just started, and we're thinking of establishing kind of a core genetic chip for TDRA studies. And we will be working with Graham on bringing people. So that's maybe the closest connection to the preclinical, bring people together from the different hospitals and the centers who work on animal models, preclinical models for different types of dementia. That could be one focus of the basic science. So I can't think of, like, I can't give a specific percentage because there's a lot of synergy, and many members of the different groups are part of different members. A lot of the initiatives that we put forward and we try to seek funding for it are initiatives that bring different disciplines together. So initiative we're thinking about is to bring scientists from the AI world, from artificial intelligence, with the peripheral biomarker world to the database standardization of care, to put together one proposal that could expand the standardization of care that incorporate AI, incorporates peripheral biomarkers, in addition to the standardized clinical and cognitive tool that I talked about. So it's less of separation and distribution of versus kind of trying to converge efforts and energies. And
okay, excellent. Any other questions? About 5 minutes left. No other questions? Oh, Dr. Rochon, Elizabeth?
Sorry, me again. I don't know what you do for your funding base, and are you, in addition to government funding or institutional funding, do you actually do fundraising? That's one question. And the other question is, I noticed a lot of the funding for fellows and things was focused on on clinicians who are medical doctors. And I wonder what the plan is in terms of funding for fellows who may not always be doctors.
Yes.
Or your thoughts. Do you want to stay focused on that because you want to, boost up the research training of medical doctors in the area of dementia?
So to answer your first part of the question, so the TDRA is funded by contribution of the partner sites, partner hospitals, so the hospital and the U of T. But beyond that, yes, we do seek funding, like philanthropic funding, so putting together proposals. But also we seek grants funding. So like I mentioned, we submitted the grant in long-term care. Many of the grants, so the database project was funded by Brain Canada proposal. We put together, we submitted with this last cycle also to Brain Canada, so for some proposals. So that's another source of funding. So it's hospital contributions or institution contribution, including the university, philanthropy, as well as competitive grant funding. In terms of the focus, so we designed that particular initiative. Initially, we thought we want to try to really engage more physicians, trainees, and residents into research, kind of the clinician scientist stream, and bring and focus on that convergence of expertise from these disciplines on the brain medicine science. But we're also in discussion. Kind of, we thought we'll see how it works, kind of the first year. But we're open that we may want to expand beyond just these the physician disciplines to really all disciplines, and so that's for the brain medicine fellowship. But the other, for example, the Sandra Black Award is open really to any. It's not linked to one discipline, and there is no. We want to expand more. So to give you other examples, so some of the proposals we're working on now to get some funding, the ones I mentioned, for example, in collaboration with the MITO2I network, so mitochondrial dysfunction network. So that would be a potential proposal if you get funding for it, to support research from pharmacology, from other disciplines, not just medicine. The same thing, we have some discussion on the neuroinflammation, neuroimmunology. So it's not, TDRA is not meant to only kind of promote physician-led research, for sure. It's just that for that one specifically, we thought there's a gap. And Graham Collingridge, the director of the TAN Center for that particular collaboration, he was very excited of the potential of bringing physician clinicians do basic science work, because this is a very, very rare individuals, I would say, that would have. So that was the initial thinking for that initiative, but that doesn't mean that we're not thinking at the same time, how to expand beyond just the physician disciplines.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions, and we're pretty much at time. So I would like to reiterate what other people have already said, which is thank you so much, Dr. Rajji, for your leadership on these initiatives, because we all know that when we join efforts and work together, then there's these synergistic effects that really can't be achieved in isolation. So it takes individuals and leaders and groups to kind of make that happen. So thank you for your leadership in that space, and also thank you for engaging with KITE and bringing us into the network. We look forward to future engagement, and thank you so much for taking the hour out of your very busy schedule today to give this presentation and answer questions. And I think this is going to be a launch point for many other conversations to come. So thank you so much again.
Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me, and it's for wonderful questions, and I look forward to further conversations in the near future. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll end the session now. I will circulate the recording to those who joined late, and thanks to everybody for coming today. Have a good afternoon.
Good.